Hi Year 10, I hope you're well, missing you all lots, and this is the second lesson for the education topic, and this focuses on the Marxist argument and education and capitalism. So during this lesson, we're going to look at the key ideas of Bowles and Gintis. They are one of your key studies that you're going to have to know inside out. Also Willis, who we'll look at when we do crime and things like that later on as well. And we're going to look at a key concept called the correspondence principle, which links to Bowles and Gintis. So we're going to do that. There's lots of different ways you can do this lesson. So on the student area, there is a worksheet that you can print out if you want to and work through that, or you can do the notes in your book and do it that way. Again, as I'm going through the activities, feel free to pause the video, make notes, read things, go over it at your own pace, and always feel free to email me if there's any questions, comments and things like that. So yeah. So as a starter, what I'd like you to think about is what makes school like society. So what happens in school that is the same as in the wider world? So one example you could think about is that there are rewards and sanctions, so punishments if you do things right or wrong. Like in society, school does that. So try and come up with as many different examples as you can. So this topic is all about Marxism and their views on education. Obviously, last lesson we looked at functionalism. Today's is about Marxism. So you can either underline the key bits that you think are important, or you could just bullet point them in your book. So what do Marxists think about education? Well, so if we recap everything that we know about Marxism, you've got your two groups. So you've got your bourgeoisie, which are your small, wealthy, powerful group. These are like your ruling class. These are the ones that have all the power in society. Then you've got your proletariat, who are a much wider, poorer class of workers, and they're the people that have only got their labour that they can sell. This is all they've really got to offer. So Marxists will see education as being a way to reinforce this, to make people aware that they are in the proletariat and reinforce that, and to make sure that they are socialised into those social positions, because they don't want them to change those social situations. So if you are in the ruling class, you don't really want people being aware that they're being exploited. So education reinforces that so that they're not aware of it and they can keep things going. So what I'd like to think is, bullet point what are the kind of key ideas in that paragraph, but also how do you think school keeps people unequal? So what ways do we make things unequal in schools? So there's lots of different examples I'm sure you can think of. So for this, I would suggest, it's up to you, but you can research this online if you want to, but on the student shared area there is a copy of the textbook, and in the textbook there on page 130 is the Bowles and Gintis key study. So what I'd like to do is add notes for what are these key four areas. So hidden curriculum, so that's from last lesson, so you should remember it. Same with formal curriculum. Correspondence principle is something completely new. So correspondence principle relates to how school mirrors the workplace, so how they are very similar. So we're training you in school for the workplace by making things very similar. So in a minute we're going to look at some examples of how those two things are very, very similar. And now I've said similar twice there. So how does it benefit society by education being like a mini workplace? What are the benefits? So again, feel free to pause, work through this at your own pace. So this table, again, if you've got a handout, you can do it on the handout, or you can do it in your book, whichever way. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 8 different examples there of how school mirrors the workplace, how they are very similar places. So I've given you one full example already. So respect and authority. So in school, you are taught to be polite to teachers, you put your hands up, you speak respectfully. And again, you do that in your workplace to your boss, because otherwise, if you didn't, you'd get punished, you might even lose your job. And again, work through the examples. So I've given you some ideas to kind of use it. If you do get stuck, the table on page 130 will help you, but see what you can do on your own, because this will see kind of testing your knowledge. So Obviously, Bowles and Gintis are all about, yeah, school's exactly like the workplace. But as we know in sociology, not everyone agrees on stuff, and yeah, it's not a consensus. So, many people are criticising Bowles and Gintis as they say, well, you're just looking at social class, and they ignore things like gender, ethnicity, and obviously those things are going to have a massive impact on education success. Like, girls always do better, and obviously some ethnicities do a lot better, which we'll come to later. Reynolds, as well, claims that the curriculum doesn't really teach you skills needed by employers. Over the years, employers have massively criticised the national curriculum, saying, GCSEs, things like that, don't really prepare you for going into the workplace. A lot of people don't have the functional math skills that they'll need when they go into certain jobs. And obviously, when you start most workplaces, you will have to have training for those. So Bowles and Gintis' argument that actually it's preparing you for work doesn't really play out. So, this is kind of a recap. So far we've done Marxist arguments and we've done functionalist arguments about what is the function of education. So, hopefully, you should have things like reinforcing inequalities. So, that would be a Marxist argument that basically education is there to reinforce inequalities. Some are going to do better in education, some are not. Again, like what we talked about with the functionalist arguments last lesson, not everyone's going to be a doctor. You do need some people to be bin men, you need some people to be a doctor, and before somebody says it, yes, I know bin men can earn a decent amount. So, it does that. Again, teaching core values. This is your functionalist argument. It's there about making sure that we all have the same values, creating then social cohesion, and serving the needs of the economy. Now, that one could either be a Marxist argument or a functionalist argument. You can argue that education does serve the needs of the economy because we're training you, we're making sure you're ready, we're allocating you into the right jobs. But you could also say, no, it's about serving the needs of Marxist capitalism and making sure that the proletariat are not really trying to, overthrow things. And then you've got your social allocation, social mobility. Again, this is your functionalist argument, but you can bring it in to your Marxist argument if you say that people from higher classes are being allocated better roles in society and getting advantages within education. You can do that. But don't worry too much about this. We're going to do more on this as we go through. But a lot of these, it depends on how you apply them, can be applied to either a Marxist argument or a functionalist argument. So, this is a really common 12-mark question and is actually really straightforward. So, discuss how far sociologists agree that the main function of today's education system is to transmit norms and values. So, the question's saying, what is the point of education? So, you've got your two sides. I would like you to have a go at this question. You can email it to me if you want to, but you don't have to. So, one side is the main function is to transmit norms and values. So this is your functionalist argument. So you're going to do one paragraph where you're saying, yes, functionalists would agree with this argument and say it's about transmitting norms and values. Maybe think of any sociologists that you can put in there, think of who we've done so far. And then your other argument is going to be, well, there's other points to education. So you can pick anything else from that previous slide and say, actually, no, the point of education is this. Is it about role allocation? Is it about keeping the working class in their places? And then your conclusion is, what do you think? Answer the question, do you agree that it's all about norms and values, or do you agree that education is actually about something else? So, hopefully this lesson's not too confusing. Again, feel free to let me know if you've got any comments, if the videos are working, if you're not enjoying them at all, I can do other things. And hopefully it won't be too much longer until I get to see you all. So, keep safe. Bye!